Gracie Bennett clutched the letter in her trembling hands, her heart sinking with each word her eyes traced on the page. Your peculiar ways and stubborn independence will leave you unmarried and alone. Her aunt's handwriting seemed to mock her from the cream-colored parchment. Tucson, Arizona Territory, 1885, was unforgiving to women who didn't fit neatly into society's expectations. And at 23, Gracie had long since accepted her place as the town's peculiarity. The wind whipped through Gracie's chestnut hair as she stood on the porch of her small homestead. 6 months had passed since her father's death, leaving her alone to manage their modest ranch just outside Tucson. Most women would have sold the property or found a husband to take over, but Gracie wasn't most women. She wore trousers when working the ranch, could shoot better than most men in the county, and had no interest in the social gatherings where eligible bachelors sought proper wives. "Miss Bennett," a voice called from the road. Gracie hastily stuffed the letter into her pocket and raised her hand to shield her eyes from the setting sun. Stanley Watson, the town banker, approached on horseback, his expression grim beneath his bowler hat. "Mr. Watson, what brings you out this way?" Gracie asked, though she already knew. "This was the 3rd visit this month. I've come with another offer for your property, Miss Bennett, double what I proposed last week." He dismounted, brushing dust from his suit jacket. "A woman alone can't possibly maintain this place. It's simply not natural." Gracie's jaw tightened. "I've managed just fine these past months, Mr. Watson." "My answer remains the same. This land isn't for sale." Watson's face reddened. "You're being unreasonable, Miss Bennett. Everyone in town knows you're heading for ruin." "Your father left debts, and without a husband, I'm handling the debts," she interrupted. "The cattle sale next month will cover everything." "If you can get them to market," Watson sneered. "Word is, you've lost 3 hands already. No respectable man will work for a woman." Gracie forced a smile. "Then I suppose I'll have to find the disreputable sort. Good day, Mr. Watson." After he left, Gracie leaned against the porch railing, fighting back tears. Watson wasn't wrong about the hands. The last one had quit yesterday, leaving her alone with 200 head of cattle and a drive to a range in 4 weeks. If she couldn't get those cattle to market, she would lose everything. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Gracie made a decision. Tomorrow she would ride into Tucson and find help, no matter what it took. The saloon doors swung open as Gracie stepped inside, the piano music faltering as heads turned her way. Women rarely entered such establishments, especially unaccompanied. Gracie kept her chin high, ignoring the whispers that followed her to the bar. "What can I get you, miss?" the bartender asked, clearly uncomfortable. "Information," Gracie replied. "I need to hire men for a cattle drive. I'm willing to pay fair wages." The bartender's eyebrows shot up. "You're the Bennett girl, ain't you? Running your pa's spread," Gracie nodded. "Folks been talking. Say you're living out there all alone, doing a man's work." He shook his head. "No offense, miss, but you won't find many willing to sign on with a female boss." "I don't need many," Gracie insisted. "Just a few good men who care more about honest pay than who's signing the checks." A deep voice spoke from behind her. "I might know someone." Gracie turned to face a tall man leaning against the wall. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat, but she could see the strong line of his jaw and the intensity in his blue eyes. Dust covered his clothes, marking him as a traveler recently arrived. "And who might that be?" Gracie asked cautiously. The man stepped forward into the light. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 28 or 29. Handsome in a rugged way with a small scar above his right eyebrow. "Name's Tanner Blackwood," he said, tipping his hat. "Just rode in from Colorado, looking for work, and I've driven cattle since I was 16. Gracie studied him. "Why would you want to work for me when no one else will?" Tanner shrugged. "Money spends the same no matter whose hand gives it, and I don't much care for folks who judge books by their covers." His eyes held hers. "When's the drive?" 4 weeks, Tucson to Prescott. "Tough terrain," he remarked. "How many head?" 200. Tanner whistled low. And how many hands you got? Gracie hesitated. Just me at the moment. The corner of his mouth twitched. Well then, Miss Bennett, Gracie Bennett, Miss Bennett, seems you found your first hand. He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Gracie shook it, feeling the rough calluses against her palm. I'll need more than just you, Mr. Blackwood, she said. I can round up a few more men I trust. Tanner glanced around the saloon. Give me a day or two. Relief washed over Gracie, but she kept her expression neutral. I pay $15 a week plus meals, drive bonus when we reach Prescott. Fair enough. Tanner nodded. I'll ride out to your place tomorrow, bring whoever I can find. As Gracie turned to leave, whispers followed her again, but this time she caught fragments of conversations about Tanner Blackwood. Heard he rode with the Rangers in Texas. Took down the Sutton gang single-handed. Never stays in one place long. Outside, Gracie mounted her horse, wondering what kind of man she'd just hired and whether she'd made the right decision. True to his word, Tanner arrived at the Bennett Ranch the next morning, accompanied by 3 men. Gracie watched from the porch as they rode up, dust billowing behind them. Miss Bennett, Tanner called, dismounting with fluid grace. Got some hands for you to meet. The men lined up beside him, eyeing Gracie with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. This here's Miguel Vasquez, Tanner said, gesturing to a Mexican man with kind eyes. Best cook on the trail and handy with cattle. Miguel nodded respectfully. Senorita Bennett, Jackson Reeves, Tanner continued, indicating a weathered man with graying temples. 20 years experience driving herds. Madam, Jackson tipped his hat. And this young fella is Danny Wilson. Only 19, but he's been working cattle since he could walk. The freckle-faced boy shifted nervously but met Gracie's gaze directly. Miss Bennett. Gracie studied the group. They weren't what she'd expected, not the usual rough sorts looking for quick money, but they seemed capable. Mr. Blackwood says you're fair and pay on time, Jackson said. That's all I need to know. I am and I do, Gracie confirmed. We leave in 4 weeks. Until then, there's plenty to do checking the herd, mending fences, preparing supplies. We'll start today, Tanner said. Boys, get your gear settled in the bunkhouse. As the men moved toward the small building near the barn, Tanner lingered. They're good men, Miss Bennett. They'll work hard for you. Why did they agree? Gracie asked bluntly. You must have told them they'd be working for a woman. Tanner's expression softened slightly. I told them they'd be working for someone who needs help and pays fair. The rest doesn't matter. Something in his direct gaze made Gracie look away. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Blackwood. Tanner, he corrected. If we're going to be working together, might as well use first names. Gracie nodded slowly. Gracie, then. The days fell into a rhythm as they prepared for the drive. Gracie worked alongside the men, rising before dawn and retiring after dark. Tanner proved to be an excellent foreman, organizing tasks efficiently and stepping in whenever needed. He never treated Gracie differently, expecting the same hard work from her as from the others, but offering the same respect too. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in fiery hues, Gracie found Tanner sitting on the corral fence watching the horses. Mind if I join you? She asked. He patted the spot beside him. Free country. Gracie climbed up, careful to keep a proper distance between them. The preparations are going well. We might even be ready early. Tanner nodded. Your father taught you well. You know ranching. He didn't have a son, Gracie explained. So he taught me everything he knew. Said land doesn't care who tends it as long as the work gets done right. Smart man. Gracie smiled sadly. He was, but not everyone saw it that way. Town folk thought it improper, me learning men's work. My aunt writes weekly telling me to sell the ranch and move back east to find a husband. Tanner was silent for a moment. And is that what you want? A husband and a different life. I want this life, Gracie said firmly. The ranch, the open sky, I just wish. She trailed off, embarrassed. Wish what? That I didn't have to choose. That someone could see me as both a rancher and a woman. She laughed self-consciously. My aunt says no man wants a wife who can outshoot him and knows more about cattle than cooking. Tanner's gaze was steady. Your aunt doesn't know every man. Something in his voice made Gracie's heart quicken. She looked at him, really looked at him, the strength in his hands, the quiet confidence in his bearing, the kindness that lived behind his serious expression. I should check on supper, she said suddenly, jumping down from the fence. Miguel was teaching me his biscuit recipe. If Tanner noticed her abrupt departure, he didn't comment. I'll be along shortly. That night, Gracie lay awake, troubled by the feelings stirring inside her. Tanner Blackwood was her employee, here temporarily for a job. Getting attached would only lead to heartache when he inevitably moved on. The next morning, Gracie was checking supplies in the barn when she heard horses approaching. Looking out, she saw Stanley Watson with 2 other men from town. "Miss Bennett," Watson called, his tone falsely pleasant. "I've brought some friends to discuss your situation." Gracie stepped out, noticing Tanner emerging from the bunkhouse, watching carefully. "My situation is fine, Mr. Watson," she replied coolly. Watson dismounted. "Now, Miss Bennett, be reasonable, Mr. Thornton here," he gestured to one of the men, "is willing to offer a very generous price for your property. More than it's worth, truly." "The ranch isn't for sale," Gracie stated firmly. "Your father's debts will be paid after the cattle drive." Watson's pleasant facade slipped. "If your drive happens at all. Word is the Diablo Canyon Pass was washed out in the last storm. You'll have to take the long route, adding days to your journey. Your cattle will lose condition and your profit with it." Gracie felt her stomach drop. Diablo Canyon was crucial to their planned route. Going around would indeed add significant time and risk. "Is that true?" she asked. "I'm afraid so," Watson replied, not looking particularly sorry. "Now, about Mr. Thornton's offer, the lady said the ranch isn't for sale," Tanner interrupted, walking up to stand beside Gracie. The other hands had emerged as well, creating a united front. Watson sneered. "And who might you be?" "Someone who doesn't appreciate men pressuring women into bad deals," Tanner replied evenly. "Miss Bennett has business to attend to. Good day, gentlemen." Watson's face reddened. "You can't possibly succeed at this foolhardy venture," he spat at Gracie. "A woman has no place running a ranch or a cattle drive. You'll fail, and when you do, my offer won't be nearly so generous." As the men rode away, Gracie turned to Tanner. "Is it true about Diablo Canyon?" Tanner nodded grimly. "I heard rumors in town yesterday. Meant to tell you today after I confirmed it." "This changes everything," Gracie said, panic rising. "The longer route means more supplies, more time. We might not make it to market before the buyers leave." "We'll make it," Tanner said firmly. "We'll push harder, start earlier." Gracie shook her head. "The cattle will lose weight on a longer drive. The profit margin was already thin. Then we'll cut costs elsewhere." Tanner placed a hand on her shoulder, the touch sending warmth through her despite her worries. "Gracie, this is your home. We won't let them take it." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Why do you care so much?" Tanner's hand fell away. "I know what it's like to lose something you love. I won't stand by and watch it happen to someone else." He turned to the other hands. "Jackson, check our supplies. Danny, we need to rework the route. Miguel, we'll need to adjust our provisions." As the men dispersed, Gracie caught Tanner's arm. "Thank you." He simply nodded, but something passed between them, understanding, perhaps, or something deeper. That evening, while the others played cards in the bunkhouse, Gracie found Tanner at the kitchen table, maps spread before him. "I've been thinking about what Watson said," she began, sitting across from him, "about me failing because I'm a woman." Tanner looked up, his expression serious. "Watson's a fool, perhaps, but he's not alone in his thinking." Gracie traced the edge of a map with her finger. "My whole life, people have told me what I couldn't do because I'm a woman. Couldn't learn to shoot, couldn't ride astride, couldn't run a ranch." She met his gaze. "Even my father, who taught me everything, worried what would happen to me after he was gone." "What did he say?" Gracie smiled sadly. "He said, 'The world isn't ready for a woman like you, Gracie girl.' Then he made me promise to be true to myself anyway." "Wise man," Tanner murmured. "What about you?" Gracie asked. "You've never once questioned my abilities or treated me differently." Tanner was quiet for a moment. My mother raised me and my sisters alone after my father died in the war. She ran our farm in Colorado, dealt with merchants, fought off claim jumpers, taught me that courage and determination have nothing to do with whether you wear trousers or skirts. He looked at Gracie directly. I judge people by what they do, not who they are. And what do you see when you look at me? The question slipped out before Gracie could stop it. Tanner's eyes softened. I see someone brave enough to fight for what she loves, someone who works harder than anyone I know, someone. He hesitated, then finished quietly, someone quite remarkable. The air between them seemed to thicken. Gracie's heart pounded in her chest as Tanner's gaze held hers. For a moment, she thought he might reach for her hand, but instead, he cleared his throat and looked back at the maps. We should get some rest, he said. Long days ahead. Gracie nodded, rising from the table. Good night, Tanner. Good night, Gracie. As she climbed the stairs to her bedroom, Gracie acknowledged the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling for Tanner Blackwood. And nothing good could come of it. The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. The new route was longer and more difficult, requiring additional supplies and careful planning. Gracie pushed herself harder than ever, determined to prove Watson wrong and save her ranch. Tanner worked tirelessly alongside her, their friendship deepening despite Gracie's attempts to maintain a professional distance. She found herself drawn to his quiet strength, his unwavering support, the rare smile that transformed his serious face. Sometimes she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression unreadable. 3 days before they were set to leave, disaster struck. Gracie was checking fences in the north pasture when her horse stepped in a prairie dog hole, throwing her hard to the ground. Pain shot through her ankle as she tried to stand. Gracie? Tanner's voice came from nearby. He had been mending fences in the adjacent field and must have seen her fall. Within moments, he was kneeling beside her. I'm fine, she insisted, trying again to stand. Her ankle buckled and she would have fallen if Tanner hadn't caught her. You're not fine, he said firmly. Let me see. Gently, he examined her ankle, his strong hands surprisingly tender. It's swelling already, might be broken, definitely sprained. You need to stay off it. I can't, Gracie protested. The drive will have to wait, Tanner interrupted. No, panic rose in Gracie's throat. We can't delay. If we miss the market, I lose everything. Tanner's jaw tightened. You won't be much help if you can't walk. I'll ride, Gracie insisted. I can still direct things from horseback. Gracie, please, Tanner. Her voice broke slightly. This ranch is all I have, all I am. Something in Tanner's expression shifted. That's not true, he said softly. The ranch is what you have, not who you are. Before Gracie could respond, Tanner lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. She instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, their faces suddenly close. I'm taking you back to the house, he said, his voice rougher than usual. Doctor needs to look at that ankle. As Tanner carried her, Gracie was acutely aware of his strength, the steady beat of his heart against her side, the clean scent of him beneath the dust and sweat of the day's work. She found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the tiny crow's feet at the corner of his eye, the way his lips pressed together in concentration. Back at the house, Tanner gently set her on the sofa. I'll send Danny for the doctor, he said, stepping back as if needing distance between them. Thank you, Gracie said quietly. Tanner paused at the door. Rest that ankle. We'll figure something out. The doctor confirmed what Tanner suspected, a bad sprain that needed at least 2 weeks of rest. Gracie argued vehemently, but the doctor was adamant. Push it too soon and you'll do permanent damage, he warned before leaving. Gracie sat on the porch that evening, frustration and fear battling inside her. Tanner joined her, sitting quietly beside her rocking chair. The cattle drive has to go on, Gracie finally said. With or without me, Tanner nodded. I agree, you'll lead it, she continued. You know the route, you know what to do. Are you sure? Tanner asked, studying her face. It's your herd, your livelihood. I trust you, Gracie said simply, and realized it was true. In the weeks she'd known Tanner Blackwood, he had earned her complete trust, something she rarely gave. Tanner's expression softened. "I won't let you down." "I know." Gracie looked out at her land, twilight painting it in purple shadows. "When you reach Prescott, sell to Hoffman first if you can. He always pays fair. Use the money to pay the hands, then bring the rest back for the banknotes." "I will." Tanner hesitated. "Gracie, I've been thinking." After the drive, her heart skipped. "Yes." But whatever Tanner had been about to say was interrupted by Miguel calling them for supper. The moment passed, and Gracie was left wondering what might have been said. The morning of the cattle drive dawned clear and cool. Gracie watched from the porch, leaning on a crutch as the men made final preparations. Her ankle throbbed, a constant reminder of her helplessness. Tanner approached, leading his saddled horse. "We're ready to move out." Gracie nodded, fighting back unexpected tears. "Be careful. The North Fork of the river can rise quickly if it rains." "I remember." Tanner shifted, seeming reluctant to leave. "Jackson knows the territory well. We'll be fine." "I know you will." Gracie managed a smile. "Good luck." Tanner stepped closer, lowering his voice. "When I get back, there's something I need to tell you. You could tell me now," Gracie suggested, her pulse quickening. Tanner shook his head. "Some things need to be said when there's time to say them properly." His eyes held hers for a long moment. "Take care of yourself, Gracie Bennett." Then he mounted his horse and rode to join the others. Gracie watched as they moved the herd out, dust rising as 200 cattle began their journey to market. She stood there long after they disappeared from view, wondering if Tanner Blackwood would indeed return and what he might say when he did. The days dragged by. Gracie's ankle improved slowly, allowing her to move around the house and yard with the help of a crutch. She spent her time catching up on accounts, mending clothes, and worrying about the cattle drive. Each day without word was both reassuring. No news meant no disasters, and maddening. In town for supplies, Gracie encountered Watson outside the general store. "Miss Bennett," he greeted her with false concern. "I heard about your unfortunate accident and your cattle drive departing without you. Such a risk, entrusting everything to hired hands." "Mr. Blackwood is more than capable," Gracie replied evenly. Watson's smile turned predatory. "Ah yes, the mysterious Mr. Blackwood. Do you know much about him, his past?" Unease prickled along Gracie's spine. "I know enough." "Do you?" Watson leaned closer. "Word is, he was involved in some trouble up in Colorado, a dispute over a woman that ended with a man dead." "I don't believe it," Gracie said firmly, though doubt crept in. Tanner had mentioned Colorado, but little about his past there. "Believe what you will," Watson shrugged, "but perhaps you should ask yourself why a man with his reputation would take interest in a modest cattle drive. Or the woman running it." Gracie left quickly, Watson's insinuations echoing in her mind. Could Tanner have ulterior motives? Was his kindness merely a strategy to gain her trust? But to what end? That night, as Gracie sat alone on her porch watching the stars emerge, she confronted her fears. In the weeks she'd known Tanner, he had shown nothing but integrity and hard work. Whatever his past might hold, she had seen his character with her own eyes. And if she was honest with herself, it wasn't just trust she felt for Tanner Blackwood. The thought of him not returning left an ache in her chest that had nothing to do with the ranch's future. 2 weeks after the drive departed, Gracie's ankle had healed enough that she discarded the crutch. She was in the barn checking supplies when she heard horses approaching. Heart racing, she hurried outside. Tanner rode at the front, looking tired but triumphant. The other hands followed, equally weary but smiling. "You're back early," Gracie called, unable to keep the joy from her voice. Tanner dismounted, his face breaking into a rare full smile that transformed him. "Hard riding and good luck, no major problems. And the sale?" Gracie asked anxiously. "Better than expected." Tanner reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch. "Hoffman paid top dollar. All your debts can be cleared with plenty left over." Relief washed over Gracie, followed by a wave of gratitude so intense it brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "All of you." The men nodded, pleased but embarrassed by her emotion. Miguel announced he would prepare a celebration meal and the others followed him to the bunkhouse, leaving Gracie and Tanner alone. "Your ankle looks better," Tanner observed. "Almost healed," Gracie confirmed. "Just in time for you to return," Tanner stepped closer. "I told you we'd make it." "You did." Gracie studied his face, noting new lines of fatigue and a healing scratch along his jawline. "Watson tried to tell me things about you, about Colorado." Tanner's expression darkened. "Did he now?" He mentioned trouble, a woman, a man who died. Gracie held his gaze. "I didn't believe him, but you want to know the truth," Tanner finished for her. He sighed. "There was trouble, yes. My sister was being harassed by a man who wouldn't take no for an answer. One night he tried to force himself on her. I intervened. We fought and he fell, hit his head. He didn't survive. Self-defense," Gracie said softly. "The sheriff ruled it as such, but the man's family had influence, made life difficult. Eventually, I decided it was better to move on." Tanner's eyes held hers. "I've never hidden from what happened, but I don't advertise it either." Gracie nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me the truth." "I've never lied to you, Gracie, never will." His voice dropped lower. "Which brings me to what I wanted to tell you before I left." Gracie's heart quickened. "I'm listening." Tanner took a deep breath. "I came to Arizona looking for a fresh start. Wasn't planning to stay in one place long, then I met you." His eyes softened. "I've never known anyone like you, Gracie Bennett. Your strength, your determination, your heart. The way you fight for this land, the way you care for it." He took her hands in his, and Gracie felt the familiar calluses, the strength and gentleness combined. "I know what people say, that you'll never find a husband because you're too independent, too different." Tanner's voice grew tender. "But if you're looking, Gracie, you've found me." Gracie's breath caught. "Tanner, I love you," he said simply. "And if you'll have me, I'd like to stay, not as your foreman but as your partner, in everything." Joy bloomed in Gracie's chest, warming her from within. "People will talk," she warned, even as she stepped closer to him. "They'll say you couldn't possibly want a wife who wears trousers and knows more about cattle than cooking." Tanner's hands moved to her waist. "Let them talk, I know what I want." "And what's that?" Gracie whispered, her face tilted up to his. "You," Tanner said. "Just you, exactly as you are." When his lips finally met hers, Gracie felt as though everything in her life, every struggle, every doubt, every moment of determination had led her to this moment. To this man who saw her truly and loved her completely. 3 months later, Gracie stood in the small church in Tucson, wearing a simple white dress that her mother had worn before her. Beside her, Tanner looked almost unrecognizable in his new suit, his usually wind-swept hair tamed for the occasion. Miguel, Jackson, and Danny sat in the front pew, grinning broadly. A smattering of townsfolk filled the other benches, some still whispering in disbelief that Gracie Bennett had indeed found a husband, and such a respected one, now that Tanner had proven himself a skilled rancher and businessman. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Tanner kissed her with a tenderness that belied his strength, and Gracie knew that her father had been wrong about one thing. The world might not have been ready for a woman like her, but Tanner Blackwood certainly was. Outside the church, as they prepared to leave for their ranch, now Gracie caught sight of Stanley Watson watching from across the street, his expression sour. "Seems not everyone approves of our union," she murmured to Tanner. Tanner followed her gaze and chuckled. "Watson's just sore because we expanded the herd with the money from the drive. By next year, Bennett Ranch will be one of the largest in the territory." "Blackwood Bennett Ranch," Gracie corrected with a smile. "Has a nice ring to it," Tanner agreed, helping her into the wagon. As they drove away, Gracie leaned against her husband's shoulder, remembering her aunt's letter that had arrived just yesterday. "I never thought you'd find a husband with your peculiar ways, but it seems I was mistaken. Perhaps there's hope for unconventional women after all." Gracie smiled, watching the landscape of her beloved ranch appear on the horizon. She had found more than a husband in Tanner Blackwood. She had found a partner who valued her strength rather than fearing it, who saw her independence as an asset rather than a flaw. Together, they would build something extraordinary on this wild frontier land, a home, a thriving ranch, and eventually a family of their own. As if reading her thoughts, Tanner squeezed her hand. "Happy, Mrs. Blackwood." "More than I ever thought possible," Gracie replied, and knew it was the simple truth. The woman they said would never find a husband had found something far greater, a love as vast and enduring as the western sky above them.